All right, thanks, Barb. I am so honored to be the moderator of such an impressive group of leaders. We have a really powerful panel here, and I'm going to start with Krista Goryl, who is the Senior Vice President, Pacific Regional Manager, Wealth Investment Management for Wells Fargo. That is a mouthful. You are a leader, lady.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So here's what I hear about you. You are the Pacific South Regional Manager. You coach financial advisors, you recruit experienced advisors, and you're an advocate for diversity and inclusion, and you sit on national committees for hiring and developing women. And additionally, you support the military and veterans at Camp Pendleton. Do you breathe as well? That's a lot.
Not only do I breathe, but I also have 2 little kids that I raise while I'm doing all that fun stuff. Right. It is an honor.
Like I said, the powerful women here leading the world. And in good company, we also have with us Carrie Vilaplana. She is the Vice President, Private Wealth and Advisor for Union Bank. The world is run by money, so we got you two here. This is really good stuff. You work with high net worth clients, and you help them build, sustain, and transfer wealth on their bespoke, unique needs, right? And then being with Union Bank, how long have you been with Union Bank?
A little over 2 years.
Okay, 2 years, but a great background. Lehman Brothers, Wedbush, Morgan Securities, also at Wells Fargo. I guess you folks know each other, but 19 years in the industry. And if I read all the boards that you're on, we may not get through this, but let's just say if you need some support or you love the arts, San Diego Symphony and La Jolla Playhouse, good stuff. Thank you for giving back to the arts. Great stuff. All right, and then finally we have Ms. Maria Zappia-Kuzmack, and she is the new Chief Administrative Officer for Southern California Permanent Day Medical Group. Now, new, tell us about that.
Well, that's a great question. So I'm within the last 2 years, I'm the new Chief Administrative Officer in San Diego, and thrilled to have transferred from our Orange County Kaiser Permanente team down to San Diego.
All right.
So I currently am settling in. 2 years does still seem new, but it's very familiar, and I'm just thrilled to be part of the team.
Yes, well, happy to have you in San Diego because we know you're doing important work. 1,400 physicians down there at Kaiser Permanente, 630,000 health plan patients, and we're in a pandemic. So these ladies are the money powerhouse, but you're saving our life. I couldn't do anything without you three. So very powerful work. I understand that you also have a Master's of Science in Nursing and have completed executive leadership program at Harvard. So excellent. Well, like I said, this is a real power panel. We're going to jump right in and we're going to talk about mentorship because it's such a critical element for growth and development, really for all leaders, right? But we're going to talk about that, and I'll just say, kicking us off, is I'm fortunate to have such a powerful mentor and boss. Sounds like I'm sucking up a little bit, but the reality is that Mike Fasula, the president of Sony, really cherishes investing into people, and if that is not through formal executive programs, through HR or pairing up mentor, that conversation is always happening. So we know it's very, very important. But here's the question, ladies. Throughout your career, who were your best mentors and why? And if you could, give us specifics on why you selected this mentor and the impact that it had on your career. And so, Carrie, do you mind if we kick it off with you?
Absolutely.
All right.
So I've had many mentors throughout my career, and I continue to participate in mentorship programs. But as I thought about the question of who my best mentors are, I really define best as most impactful. And so I thought about who kind of fit that bill, and 2 individuals came to mind. These are 2 individuals, different companies, different stages of my career, but they're 2 people that worked on teams with me that were in more senior positions, and we worked closely together. And I had an opportunity to really shadow them and see how they worked, see their work ethic, see how they interacted with people and the type of work product that they produced.
So it wasn't formal. You were saying, I'm seeing this in real time and real life.
And sort of self-selected,
Nice.
if you will. In fact, I would...
Is it stalking?
It may have been. It may have been. because if you asked either of these individuals, I'm pretty confident they may not have known that
Okay.
I deem them to be mentors, but I really admire them and really wanted to emulate them. And it just so happened that in each case we became friends, and those friendships really aided in the impact that they had on my life, because we really got to know each other and became open. I was able to be transparent, and that closeness that comes with a friendship really aided in my ability to ask them their opinion and their ability to provide me with advice that was very specific to me because they knew who I was.
So you knew what you wanted in your mentorship toolkit. You saw, and you wasn't formal. So what I'm hearing from you is that it doesn't have to be formal in order for you to learn and to grow, but you know what tool sets or skills you wanted to develop.
Absolutely.
That is excellent. How about you, Marie? What's your thoughts here?
Well, it's funny. My first mentor, I can think back many years ago when I first became a nurse, and it was the charge nurse in the skilled facility I worked in. I mean, the strictest nurse, dressed from white from head to toe, but really taught me structure with compassion. And I didn't realize she was mentoring me at the time, but when I think about it, it really helped shape my future. Most recently, a mentor has been one of my previous bosses who really took the time to challenge me and invest the time in me and saw potentials that I had. And we also developed a friendship. And it's funny because for a period of time, I became her boss. So she was a really good mentor, spent the time, taught me so much, gave of herself, and a lot of constructive criticism, which is so important for the mentor. And
So both women, your mentors.
Both women.
That is really powerful. So what I'm hearing from this is that while you were looking at this really in an informal way, did you formally reach out and you said, hey, I like what you're doing. Show me.
Yes.
Yes.
And it was incredible to have someone to say, okay, and make that commitment. And then we just really helped teach me, because you don't know what you don't know until you have a mentor that takes the time to invest in you.
That's great.
And so,
How about you, Krista?
So I would say sort of follow Marie. So I will talk about my first mentor I ever had, and that was when I was starting my career in finance. That was back in my early 20s. And I was in this male-dominated industry, and here was this incredibly successful woman in my office. So I approached her and really said, hey, how did you get here? And could you help me? And she thankfully said yes. And that began our relationship. And what she did that was so impactful, going back to really what it's about is the impact that it has on your career, is she really challenged me. She would give me projects that were challenges outside of my normal job. And then when I met those challenges, she advocated for me and celebrated that and helped me create a brand. She would also bring me into these meetings that I had no business being in. They were so high profile and above my pay grade, but she'd bring me in just to learn and just to watch her in action and how she dealt with giving a presentation or handling questions. And then we eventually got to a point where she would push me outside my comfort zone and really say, okay, Krista, you're going to present on this part. You're going to field these questions again in this big meeting. And that really helped me develop preparation skills, which is something that I carry over into my career today, which is really important. But some other lessons that she gave me that I think are really important are always to be professional. I know it sounds basic, but especially in a male-dominated industry, for anyone watching, you always want to make sure you hold yourself confidently. You don't have to have this amazing designer outfit, but just
It doesn't hurt, and this is very nice, I might add.
Especially starting out my career. I wasn't in the business of being able to go out there and buy all these fancy clothes, so I only had a couple that I wore every week. But the point is that for me, it felt confident, I felt professional, and I felt as a young female, I wanted to be one of the most professionally dressed women in the room. And I think about that lesson to this day.
So it came from the inside, it didn't come from the outside, which is, I think, a huge lesson on values, right? And being real. That is so powerful. Yep. Thanks for saying that. Question, if she were not in your path, would you be successful where you are today?
I hope I would be, but I think it would have gone differently because I think she accelerated my success by giving me that confidence. You know, I was confident because I had her by my side. So if I was going to fail, I had her there as my advocate, but also giving me the experiences that I probably wouldn't have naturally taken for years to come, just because she could. She was in that senior leadership position and she had that ability to kind of take the time.
But a difference. A tangible difference. I think that's why this is so important and so great that the Business Journal facilitates these conversations, because, you know, diversity, we think we know what that really means, or in inclusion, and what it really means is formal training or some measures of modeling after what successful people do, what successful leaders do, who just happen to be women. So if that lady was not in your life, your trajectory would have been different. So this is why these conversations are so important. I also have a question for you about you being a mom. So your children watch you every day, very nicely dressed in your clothes. Designer or not, she looks great. You know, how do you balance that all? How do you mentor to your children? Because you're mentoring down, and I know you had talked about mentor being really a two-way. Do you do that with your children, your family life?
I try to. My children are young, so they only take so much of what I say at face value. But it is important because they're modeling you all the time. So again, going back to the way you're carrying yourself at work, it's the same as when you're in your household, because you know, they really are looking up to me as their idol, as their mom. And, you know, I have a daughter as one of those two children, and I certainly hope that she feels like she can do whatever it is that she puts her mind to, because I really got that feeling and support from other women in my career.
And especially now that our offices and our homes have merged, with the exception of in the hospitals. And speaking of in the hospital, I know that there is a lot of women, up and coming nurses and so forth, but it's really in the administrative areas, right? So you've really broken the glass ceiling. Talk about that two-way mentorship that helped you get there. What were the actual practical, the structure that, you know, in the toolkit that helped you get where you are today?
I think what was really important was, I want to go back to your point about just that exposure and pushing me into areas that weren't as comfortable. And my mentor took me into meetings, and I did present. So my circle of influence grew, and I began to connect with people that I might not have been exposed to otherwise. So I think that was the opportunity. And then to also find other women leaders who you gravitate towards for traits that you know you have but had to develop. And so that was very much an important part of my work. And it is today still, because in work, all of us work with many men and many women, but it's really how we carry ourselves and how we always strive to continue to educate ourselves. I'm always looking for a mentor. I was joking a little bit earlier that Diane Sawyer won't answer the telephone, but I'd love to seek her out. But I do always gravitate towards those that continue to influence and are businesswomen, and take that back, as I also then commit to having mentees myself.
Right, that's a good point. She's not returning my calls either, so just so you know, really none of them are Barbara Walters, none of them. But Carrie, you touched upon a toolkit as well, and giving back. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about the structure of mentorship.
Sure. So, are you talking about like as a mentee?
Yeah. As a mentee now, bringing it down, bringing it the other way, you know, and the expectations of what you expect them to do, how they're going to be successful, because, you know, you're targeting, you know, what do they say? If you want something done, you go to a woman because they're usually the busiest person. Go to the busiest person. How do you approach the busiest person? I mean, what should that look like?
I think, you know, generally speaking, I think in a mentee-mentor relationship, the mentee really is the one that should be sort of driving the relationship. And the reason being, I think, to be quite honest, mentors typically don't have the time, but they make the time. And so in my view, the mentee really is the one that needs to put a little bit of legwork in on the outset. At the outset, they really need to do some thinking about what they hope to achieve, what their goals and objectives are for that relationship, whether it be a particular skill set they hope to learn, or whether there's some expertise or a network that they hope to leverage. And once they've identified what those specific goals and objectives are, then they need to think critically about which mentor would be the right person for them to align with. And I think it will help them to sort of determine who the right fit will be. And once they've been paired up, the mentor will appreciate the fact that they've done this legwork, they've identified what their goals and objectives are, and it'll show the mentor that they respect the mentor's time and commitment to this. And
what if they say no? What if the mentor, to the audience, to the young leaders out there, how should you prepare yourself mentally?
That is always a possibility, but a no is always a possibility in anything that we do, and that's the worst case scenario. And I think if you're trying to develop a skill set, or you're trying to leverage a network, there's going to be different avenues to be able to achieve that. So if a single individual doesn't have the time or can't fit you in as a mentor, there will be other individuals that you can tap. So
Or asking for a referral, maybe. I know human resources is rich, always looking for the best leaders, someone that comes up with an articulate plan for themselves that adds value to the company. I think that's going to be acknowledged as well. So it's that part of what's on the inside of what I want to achieve personally, but at the end of the day, it contributes to the business. I mean, the business wins, right, ultimately. So.
To that same point where you're talking about getting the no if you ask a mentor, I would really empower all the women listening to this to take a risk and actually look for that senior leader, male or female, who you would love to be your mentor, and ask them, because what's the worst that's going to happen? Like you said, they're going to say no, but at least they appreciate and are flattered by the ask and you're on their radar. But what's the best that can happen? You could start a mentor relationship with that person. They then become your advocate, and that might even lead to a promotion at some point.
Right.
So I think taking that risk is exciting. And what I always like to ask those people, whether or not they choose to be my mentor, is, what are you reading? What are you listening to? Because if they're taking time away to do that in their busy schedule, I should probably be learning those same things. So I always ask, what book are you reading? What's your favorite podcast? And I've gotten some of my best recommendations just from, again, when I'm interacting with those senior leaders, asking what they're doing, whether or not they've been.
Right, that's a really good point. I think also you should emotionally prepare yourself for a no, right? These are the busiest people there are, so have your backup list. But then also too, as we were talking earlier, LinkedIn, you may be in an environment where there isn't someone that you admire. Sad but true. I've had a job like that before. So to really reach out to the network, there's such a rich network, especially on LinkedIn. This is not sponsored by LinkedIn, by the way, but it is a great platform for connecting. Ladies, last question. We're coming in for a landing before we close this lovely discussion, which I wish we can continue forever, and I know you do too. So what is your best piece of advice to all those leaders out there? It can be related to mentorship or not, but really your mantra, your best piece of advice. Let's go with you.
Well, I would say my best piece of advice is commitment to mentoring others. Pay it forward. The future is just around the corner, and so I have a commitment to just always mentoring someone so they have the opportunity to be a future leader.
And Marie is on LinkedIn, just so you know. So I'm hearing a lot of dings on her phone already. All right, and let's go with you next.
Sure. My best piece of advice is do what you love. Find some way to incorporate that into every day, every week. I mean, it sounds corny, and I know you hear that all the time, but we talked about this earlier. It's part of my bio. Nonprofit connection is a big component. It's very important to me, and I've incorporated it into my life. And I would say, that's a decision that I make. I spend time doing that, and it's very gratifying to do that. So I think that's really important, and it helps you. It helps the bad days get better, and it helps make the good days even better.
And I think related to that, I love that. And it sounds simple, but it is quite complex. You have to have some kind of goal, and you have to know yourself. What tools do you think one would need to really understand themselves, whether it is through Myers-Briggs testing, what do I have a proclivity for, again, going back to HR, what tools and resources can we leverage? Would you recommend some of those things, more formal process, or what do you think that looks like?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if those are available, I think those are all extremely worthwhile. But I think, we've centered our conversation today around mentorship, and I think conversations in some form of mentor situation would also help you elicit some things that you might be interested in, or conversations with colleagues.
Right.
You talked about the power of three. I hope you bring that up. But I think talking to colleagues, talking to those people that are close to you, really, trying to figure out what really makes you excited, is the most important part of that. So I think certainly anything analytical will help, but if you don't have access to that, if your employer doesn't have access to those resources, just engaging in conversation that's centered more around the things that are really personally gratifying. And if there can be a business connection, that's wonderful. There isn't always a business connection, but that's okay, because sometimes your interactions or the time that you spend doing those things is gratifying in and of itself, and it's your outlet.
And whatever you're admiring, there's something that's triggering you. Like you have to unpack why do I like this person? What is it that's resonating? So to really deeply think about that. Okay, the three, Krista. Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about what Carrie was talking about, and this is really important to me, which is the power of three. So we've talked about mentorship, and really in our organizations, we're talking about how can I develop and move forward. What do I need? So I think what's most important is, number one, to be mentoring someone beneath you in the organization. Really someone you can help pull up and advocate for and sponsor into the next role and share knowledge with. That's the first person. The second person is really a peer of yours, where you're going through and you're talking about what you're doing in your same job together, and how can you redefine and innovate that position to get you on the radar of senior leadership. And then the third person is that senior leader, is that mentor that you really want to be like in your career. And I always talk to that person about, what skills do I need that I can develop right now in this position so I can be in that next position. Because the best thing to do is start now. If you want a job, look at that description and figure out how in your current position you can start to build those skills. It might not be exactly what they're looking for, but something that if you got an interview tomorrow, you could come in with that experience.
That's really good advice. All right, you are awesome. Well, this whole panel is awesome. All right, so we're coming in for a landing. I'm going to close out that last question with telling you my sage nuggets, which are personal brand. You can't be found, you can't be discovered, you can't connect, especially now in this COVID era. There is no water cooler to gather around, right? You have to digitally be relevant. And so I would suggest you have to forecast, you have to tell the world what your vision is, you have to plant that seed in order to let the world know they're not omniscient, right? They're not going to guess. And it took me a long time to figure that out. Why don't they know? Well, because you didn't tell them. So build your personal brand, get on LinkedIn, talk about, and be aspirational. Be truthful. Be aspirational, though. All right, so coming in for a landing, the last question is really centered around that same bit of advice. We are in COVID era. We are talking about connecting with people to learn and to lead. How has COVID been for you? How have you maintained your connections and all of those things that help you be successful leaders? So Marie, we'll start with you.
What's in healthcare, it's been
Oh my gosh, that's right. This lady is connecting.
an intimate relationship.
Right. 1,600 doctors and many, many patients.
And the important thing is navigating it together, and more than ever, the connection with our teams to navigate. Because not only did we worry about our members every day, but also each other. We all have families and kids, and we've had to navigate the world just like everyone else. So we never closed down, but our relationships were tested more than ever because we've had to do things differently. So different. We never thought we would do things as different as we are now. Our care will look different going forward, but we will get through this. But I would say connections and relationships with those that you have a new respect for other roles that you may not have been aware of, and how they all contribute to each other and really to what we're doing in San Diego.
That's really important. I think it actually connects especially to what both of you do, because times are uncertain, economic conditions are uncertain, jobs are uncertain. The next best thing to being healthy and having that lifeline to health care is having wealth and access to wealth. So Carrie, how has your job changed because of COVID? How do you keep your connections?
Absolutely. Well, I think you are exactly right. I mean, it has put a focus on making sure that not only your wealth is protected, but in this environment that we're in, with all the changes over the past 7 or 8 months, and that continue, it's extremely important to maintain our relationships with our clients, maintain our relationships with our colleagues. We've always had the benefit of working in an office environment where you can easily connect with colleagues, and always took that for granted in some respects. And so, we're leveraging technology like we've never leveraged it before, and maintaining connections both internally and with our clients, and making sure that they're not only feeling comfortable with where they are, but comfortable with where we're going, and making sure that we're continuing to maintain dialogue.
And we'll get through this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll get through this. There is a rainbow on the other side of this rainstorm. We know that, right? It does take time. And so, Krista, just closing that out with you, how are you staying connected?
I think we're doing the same thing, obviously leveraging technology, staying in front of our clients, but the conversations have shifted, because a lot in your industry, our clients are assessing their mortality. They're talking to their families more than they ever have before. They're talking about the values for their wealth. How are they going to transfer that wealth onto the next generation, which right now we're seeing trillions of dollars transferring over the next decade. Are they prepared for that? We're also seeing changes in our business owner clients. There's been so much disruption in businesses, whether they're thriving in COVID or they're really looking at selling because it's not working out for them. So trying to consult those clients. And then finally, philanthropy. We're helping clients figure out, okay, how can I help support organizations that are struggling right now, and put together the best philanthropic plan for our wealth. So I feel like I am having an impact, and I want to involve my whole family with that message, because we really want to give back.
Well, Union Bank, Wells Fargo, and Kaiser are so privileged to have such amazing leaders of you. And of course, my final comment, how do I stay connected? Well, clearly the San Diego Business Journal keeps me connected. Barb and her production of these events really help us all stay in lockstep with getting on the other side of all of these difficult and tough times. So with that, I would say thank you for watching. I hope you connect with these leaders. I hope you stay connected, and thanks for watching these leaders of the future.